There's something when it comes from a person's mouth, their testimony, their story. Lori and I, it was kind of interesting. We really never dated before we got married. Maybe we went on 3 dates, maybe?
10.
She said 10. Wow. They were just so good. She remembers all of them, But we, she was in Oklahoma. I was in, riding back and forth. So we got married and we had about 6 years without kids, and we dated during that time. And one of the things that we did several times, we did a lot of traveling. So we'd wind up in a college town and just roll down the window. You see a college student, and we say, "Hey, can you tell us the best pizza place in town?" And they would say something, and then we'd go a couple blocks later and roll down another window, and they would say something. And when you found one that was said multiple times, that's where you go. And there would be some hole-in-the-wall pizza place that was really, really, really good, because you knew those college students knew where the best pizza was, and they did. There's something about that voice speaking into it. Now there's Yelp. You can get on there, and when something says restaurant from hell, not to go there, no matter how nice it looks, or best thing ever, and I like that. Amazon, the stars. Isn't that cool? You're looking for a product, and I love to read the reviews, and if the bulk of them says, I would have rather flushed my money down a toilet, versus a 5-star that says, this Christmas, I bought one for everyone in the family. You know what product to buy just by watching those stars, by what people say. I love, when I shop, when I'm in looking at maybe, a hardware store, whatever, I like to look at people that have used it. I've got a lot of buddies in the church that I love to call when they've done different things. I always love finding old Rick Prosser when I'm having to do a plumbing thing. I'm thinking, because he's done it. He's been there. He knows how it works. Just to ask him or Steve or Bob or Greg or, just different people, or Alan. It's just so powerful to hear it come out of someone's mouth. And have you ever been in a conversation, and you're talking about, did you see that wreck on Keller last week? It was a mess. I don't know what happened. There must have been 10 cars right out there, in front of a, Steak and Shake, and you're talking about it. And then someone comes up with a bandage on their head. And they said, yeah, I was in that accident. And all of a sudden, everyone shifts to that person as they begin to tell the story about how a deer ran out of, Starbucks, ran across the road, and this person hit this. And all of a sudden, it shifts that direction. Or you hear some story, and you're talking with some people, and they're talking about what took place at Mount Fuji, Illinois. That's down there where the mountain range is with Mount Vernon. You know about it, the Piggly Wiggly barbecue, and they have open mic night, and everyone's been talking about, we don't know what happened. And then someone said, man, I was there. I was going to perform there, and Blake Shelton showed up, and he sang a song because he loves those barbecue chicken gizzards, and he signed my guitar, and everything shifts to that direction. Have you noticed that? There's something about someone that's been there, that's done there, that ate there, that fixed that thing, that was present. All of a sudden, there's a validity to the conversation. Even as he got up here, Luke, this morning, all of a sudden you see that shift, like, oh, who is this guy? What's his story? What happened? I didn't know that. And you're just pulled into that. We have a story like this that's found in John 9, and I just want to read this. I've got 2 stories I'd like to read from Scripture. This one's in John 9, and we'll start with verse 1. Now, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth. When he said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with his saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated since. So he went and he washed, and he came back seeing. Therefore, the neighbors and all those who had previously seen that he was blind said, is this not he who sat and begged? Some said, this is he. Others said, he's like him. But he said, I am he. All of a sudden, you see this shift. You see the whole group, because it's coming out of his mouth. Therefore, they said to him, how were your eyes open? Tell us your story. And answered, a man called Jesus made clay, anointed my eyes, and said to me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and I received my sight. They said to him, where is he? Where's this Jesus? And he said, I don't know. Then the story continues, Matthew 9, 13 through 25. They brought him who was formerly blind to the Pharisees. Now it was a Sabbath when Jesus had made the clay and opened their eyes. And that was a sticking point. That was where they had problems. Then the Pharisees also asked him, and how had he received his sight? He said, he put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Therefore, some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath. Others said, how can a man who's a sinner do such things? And there was a division among them. Then they said to the blind man again, what do you say about him? Because he opened your eyes. Because he's a person talking like, what do you say about him? He said, he's a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been born blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him who had received sight. And they asked them, saying, is this your son who you say was born blind? How does he now see? His parents answered and said to them, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But by what means he now sees, we do not know, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. He is of age, ask him, for he will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if anyone confessed that he was the Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, his parents said, he's of age, ask him. So they again called the man who was born blind, and he said to him, give God the glory. We know not that this man is a sinner. And he answered and said, whether he's a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, though I was blind, now I see. Very simple. That's what I know about Jesus, is, man, I was blind, but now I see. That type of story people lean into. Even religious people, they have a hard time with it. But all of a sudden, when someone like that speaks, we lean into it. There's another story of a fella that, kind of had a rough life. We don't know how he got into it, but he had wound up living in the tombs, cutting himself, running in the tombs. He was a spooky guy out there. They chained him up many times, and somehow he would break out of the chains, and people just didn't like to go to that graveyard. But one day, Jesus showed up walking by the area, and he ran out of the tombstone like he did with anyone else. But Jesus cast the darkness out of him, set him free. Set him free. And by the way, he would run around naked. That doesn't help either. So anyway, Jesus set him free. Mark 5:18 and 20. And Jesus, he was going across the boat because it scared the town so much because they knew how crazy this guy was, and they saw him clothed in his right mind, that when they saw that Jesus had set him free, they said, leave us. You scare us. Whoever you are, you scare us. And so Jesus got into the boat, and he who had been demon-possessed begged him that he might be with him. However, Jesus did not permit him, but he said to him, go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he's had compassion on you. And he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis, or the 10 towns, all that Jesus had done for him. And all marveled. It's very interesting that that town rejected him, but this time later they receive him because of this man's testimony. It doesn't say anything about, Jesus said, go to seminary, study the Bible for 10, 15 years, and then maybe you can share, you can talk with people. But he just says, you've got a story to tell. Go tell that story. Just very simple. Share your testimony. And because he did, it changed those 10 towns. It had that much an effect on him. Revelations 12:9-11, it says this. So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. And he was cast to earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren who accused them before God day and night has been cast down. And this is what it says, and they, or us, that have Jesus in our lives, overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. It's just that powerful. When we have the blood of the Lamb, when we ask Jesus in our heart, and when we begin to tell the story, it's good for us. It's good for us to go over that story. It's good for us to remind ourselves of the redemption that Jesus has done in our life. But it's good for us to share with other people. It brings down the kingdom of God. The power of God cannot stand before it. The devil cannot distract you or people around you when you just simply share your story. This is what Jesus has done. We have a card, and I want to make you aware of it because I'm going to have you interact with this card before the morning is out. If you're on the front row, if you look underneath, you'll find a pin in one of these cards. If you're behind the front row, which is the bulk of you, if you look in front where the cards are, there's some pins up there, and you'll see one of these. Go ahead and grab one of them. Go ahead and grab one of them. We're going to have you do this morning in a little bit, but I just want to make you aware of the card. It says, then Jesus, and there's two statements there. I was, but then Jesus. I was, but then Jesus. And it's your story. You say, well, man, I need 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7 pages. No, it's good to make it concise. Because if you can tell it concise, your ability to lead people to the Lord will be greater. You know, you catch someone somewhere, they don't want to hear, well, I was born here. And just, they don't want to hear the whole story, but they want to hear the good stuff. It's kind of like the guy that was born blind says, I don't know. I knew I was blind. I was born blind. But I met Jesus, and now I can see. Is that pretty simple? Or the other guy says, I was naked, running among the tombs, cutting myself, screaming out, breaking chains. No one ever invited me over to family reunions. But then I met Jesus, and I wear clothes now. I'm invited places, and I tell people the story because he casts the darkness out of me. And I think about my story, just real simple, is I was looking for a friend. I'd move every 4 years, sometimes every 2 years as a pastor's kid, and it was just like, once again, I was without a friend, and I saw a group of kids. I was always trying to get in that crowd. I was always doing crazy stuff, got so many stitches, so many broken arms trying to do stuff. I'd be dead today if the Lord hadn't saved me. But I met Jesus, and I met the ultimate friend that walks with me no matter where I live, no matter where I move. He is with me. And now, today, I help people get out of that crowd, and I introduce them to true friendship. And that's my story. We're going to have some people that are going to come up here and share their story. If you come on up here, they're going to share. I was, but then Jesus. And so they're going to share, and just be thinking about this as they share. Who's going to go first?
Not my side,
The other side. There's just one at the other. Oh, here we go. You're on the other side. Okay.